Hey everybody, welcome to Systems Expert. Let's dive into the question.
Hi, Clement. So I want you to design an API for Reddit, and specifically the core flow of interacting with a subreddit. So to get you started, I wrote down a couple pieces of information on the screen, and I've given you the schema for a user and for a subreddit. This is kind of what they look like when they're stored on the back end. But you'll notice they only really have IDs, which are unique strings. Obviously, they have more stuff on the back end, but that information is not really useful for you during this design question. So what you have on the screen is really all you need. And given this, I want you to design the API for what happens within a subreddit.
Okay, so we're designing the API within a subreddit. And I guess just to clarify, to make sure that we're on the same page as far as our understanding of a subreddit is an online community where users can write posts, they can comment on posts, they can, I guess, vote on posts, either upvote, downvote. They can share, report posts. They can even become moderators. Are we designing the API for all of this functionality, or are we limiting ourselves to something?
So you covered most of it, but let's keep things simple and focus only on writing posts, writing comments, and upvoting and downvoting. You can forget about all the extra auxiliary features like sharing or reporting or moderating, etc.
Okay, so we're really just focusing on the very narrow but core functionality of a subreddit. Writing posts, commenting on them, and upvoting or downvoting them, right?
Yep.
Okay. So then I'm thinking that given the information that you've given me here, given the user and the subreddit, I'm probably going to want to define a few more entities, the entities that we find in a subreddit, things like posts or comments, and there might be a couple more. And then for each of those entities, I'm going to define all of the methods or API methods or endpoints that we might have, like create post, list posts, that kind of stuff. Is this in line with what you're asking me to design?
Yes, but just make sure you include the signatures of the endpoints, so what each method takes in and return, and the types for all of the arguments that they're taking in and returning.
I see. So for instance, if I were doing create post, you want me to also write, what I'm passing into that method, like maybe the contents of the post and the fact that that would be like a string or something. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So then I think I have most of what I need to get started. Perhaps the best way to jump into this would be to really nail down the entities that I'm going to be defining, and then figure out after that what methods each entity is going to support. So here we've got user and subreddit, but you said we don't need to worry about those anymore, just the fact that they have a user ID and a subreddit ID.
Mm-hmm.
So within a subreddit, like I hinted at before, there are posts, there are comments. Comments live on posts. And then is there anything else that would make sense as a first class citizen, so to speak, in our API as a primary entity? I guess maybe votes, but votes seem like they're kind of attached to a post or to a comment. So for now, I don't think I'm gonna categorize votes as an entity. I might come back to that later. So I guess
Okay.
for now, yeah, for now, the main thing that I'm thinking of is we have posts. So I'll write post. And then we have comments. So I'll write comment. These would be our two primary entities. So what I've written in red here, these are kind of siblings of user and subreddit here in our API. They're the main entities. And then each of these is going to have a bunch of methods. So I'm thinking that we would have basic CRUD operations for these. So we would have create post, create comment, get post, get comment, edit, delete, and list. Those are the 5 kind of primary methods that I can think of right now off the top of my head. So I guess I'll start by writing them down. Create, create, get, edit, delete, and then list. Some of these might be very redundant. Some of these might look very similar. Like, for instance, I'm thinking that delete and get might look very similar. They might have very similar signatures.
Okay.
But I suppose we'll see that in a second. So maybe I'm going to move comment to the top here for now.
Okay.
And we'll deal with comments later. Let's start by just going through all of the post and then going into comments, okay?
Okay.
All right, so before I get into the signatures of the methods, it might be easier to define the schema of a post. So what you gave here with like user ID, and then you said there was more stuff. Let's do that for a post.
Okay.
So what would a post look like? I guess, given that we see that we have subreddit IDs, that tells me that we probably want a post ID. I think that every entity on Reddit is going to have some sort of unique identifier.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll write that. I'll put post. You would have a post ID. And you said you want me to define the type. So this would be a string.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So post ID string. Then what else? We would have, and I suppose the post ID, if this is a unique identifier, this would not be like the name or the title of the post. This would be something that is unique and that is generated on the back end, on the server side.
Okay.
Not the client side.
Yep.
I think the second thing that we probably want is a user ID or a creator ID for a post, because when you display a post on Reddit, you know, or you can see who posted that post, right? So we need, I think, a creator ID. I'm going to add creator ID, and this would be a string, and I think this would just be this user ID. This would be what shows up here.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a user and I have a special ID that's like 123, and then I post a post, then this creator ID would be 123. Then I suppose a post lives under a subreddit. So we may want to keep track of the subreddit ID as well, like the subreddit that our post lives in.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to add that.
Yeah.
And I think this might actually be really useful. Yeah, I think this will come into play as well in the listing, because when we're going to list, like listing will likely take a subreddit ID as a parameter. But I guess, and then every post that's returned would have that subreddit ID. So I think it makes sense to have a subreddit ID here. So I'll put subreddit ID. And like I said, this is a string, and this is the same thing that we had up here in the subreddit entity.
Yep.
And then, is there anything else that we want on a post? I think we probably want when the post was created, right? Because you can see the date. Like if I go on Reddit right now, I'm pretty sure that I can see when a post was first written. So I think I'll store a timestamp for when something was created. Maybe I'll give myself so that we can see the entire signature on one screen. I'm going to give myself some space here. I'll move this down here and put a comma here. And now we're going down to the next line. So I'll put created at, and this would be a timestamp representing when this was posted.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to think. I think this might be all that we need for a post. What else do you see on a post? I guess you do see, you see how many votes a post has, right? You can see, like if you're on the homepage of Reddit, you can see, oh, that post has 1,000 upvotes or 1,000 downvotes. So I think we're going to want a vote count as well.
Okay.
That might be the last parameter. So I'll put votes count. Votes count, and this would be an integer. So I'll put int. And I think this might be it for posts, unless we also... Do we want to show the number of comments on a post at any point in time? Like, we certainly want to show the comments, but do we want to show the number of comments?
I think we do. Yeah, we want to be able to say that this post is very popular or very controversial, right? So even a post that might be at a low vote count might have a lot of comments, and so we probably want to be able to display that.
Okay, so then I'll put comments count here. Comments count, and this would be an integer as well. And I think this would be tracked by the backend, basically. Like, we'll probably have something where if we query a post, then maybe the backend computes the number of comments that it has, or maybe when we add a comment, it updates, the comments count in the database, something like that. Point is, it would be obviously, created server side. But so that is what I think a post looks like. Now, as far as the methods, let's see. We can start with create, maybe. Create seems like the natural one to start with. Creating a post, what would it take? We said that the post ID is generated server side, so we're not going to pass in a post ID here. We would want to pass in the subreddit ID that we are at, or that we are in, rather, and we would want to pass in the creator ID, because that's how we get this creator ID. And the creator ID we said is just a user ID. So here, I'm going to pass in both the user ID and the subreddit ID, and the user ID would become creator ID in the backend. Okay, so this is going to be, here's going to be user ID string, and this, again, this user ID becomes the creator ID on the post entity, and then we can take in a subreddit ID, and this is just the subreddit ID.
Okay.
And this is very easily accessible on the client side, because we probably just have them, at all points in time. If we're in the subreddit, we have the subreddit ID, and we always have the user ID. And then I suppose, as far as the contents of the post, can we just assume that for now we have like a title and a description?
Sure.
And they're both strings? Strings are fine, or do we want images?
Strings are okay. Yeah. And for images, we could have another field, but it's roughly similar to what you have, so we don't need to add it.
Okay, so let's just go then with title, and this is a string again, and then we'll go with desk, DSC, and this will be a string. I think that ends the create method. So the create method is fairly straightforward. And I suppose
what does it return?
We want to. Yeah, I was gonna say, because you wanted me to define the return. I think for all of our methods, we can probably go with the standard of just returning the entity that we're interacting with. So if you're creating a post, you return the post. If you're getting a post, you have to, of course, return the post. Editing and deleting a post, you also return the post. Like, even for deleting, I think that by certain API standards, you still want to return whatever entity you've deleted. So I guess basically, like, all four of the methods that deal with one entity will just return that entity. Is that okay?
Yep.
So then this will return, and I'll write it in red, post. So it's returning this entity type. Then, as far as getting a post and deleting a post, I said before that I think these are going to be very similar, so they're going to be kind of identical. So I will say both of them take in a post ID, and I think that's it, right? You get a post by its post ID, you delete a post by its post ID.
Mm-hmm.
Although the only problem is getting a post is fine, right? So I guess getting a post, we can write post ID. The only problem with deleting a post is that, let's string here, and here the post ID is this post ID up here, which is generated server side. But with deleting a post, I can't delete your post or any other user's post on Reddit. So we need we need an ACL system, right? An access control list system, like a permissioning system. And do you want me to like design the permissioning system, or can I assume that like the backend can handle permissions based on a user ID?
So you can assume that as long as you give the backend the data that it needs to perform the access control, then that's fine. Just make sure you pass in whatever the backend needs.
Okay, and so then by following that, I'm gonna assume that all that the backend needs is a user ID, and you could imagine that the user ID might be a little bit more than just some arbitrary string. Maybe it has some authentication information kind of embedded in it. Maybe it's generated by our authentication service or something.
Yep.
So that's what we would use for our access control. So I suppose maybe like every method passes the user ID, and that way the user ID is used, for create. It has the dual purpose of being used as the creator ID, but for a bunch of other methods, it's also used as an access control check.
Yeah.
And that way, maybe we can like make sure that we're not dealing with bots as well and stuff like that. So I'll just pass in user ID to every single method, and with the understanding that the server always uses the user ID for ACL stuff and perhaps other duties.
Okay.
So let me move this here. We'll pass in user ID string, and I believe that that's it for get.
Yeah.
And then I think that for delete we can just paste this again and have the same thing, because when you delete, you don't need to pass in anything else. You don't need to pass in a subreddit ID. You're like, so long as you have the post ID, you know what post you're dealing with, since it's a unique identifier. So yeah, I think this is good. And then
what about
editing is going to look very similar. The only thing it'll take in extra are the fields that you can actually edit, and those would be title and description. So I think I'm actually going to paste the same thing that we were dealing with here. So let me paste that again. I'll put this up here, and I will move our parentheses here at the end, move it to the side, and give myself a tiny bit more space. And here it'll take in a title. This is going to be a string, and then it'll take in a description, and this will be a string.
Okay.
I think that's it for editing. So yeah, these APIs are they're very clean, very simple, and they all return a post, right? So maybe I'll grab this and try to copy it here. We would have a post here, we would have a post here, and then we would have a post down here. Now for listing, it's going to be a tiny bit different because we will be returning a list of posts, not a single post. And if we're on Reddit has like huge scale, right? We're dealing with, I don't know if it's in the billions, but at least in the hundreds of millions of users, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I suppose like that doesn't even matter, to be honest. Like even if we were dealing with just like a few hundred thousands of users, the point is we can assume that a post, or rather a subreddit, might have hundreds or thousands of posts. And if we do assume that, which I think would be a correct assumption, we're going to want our listing to be paginated.
Yep.
So we can't just have the API return like 200 posts. We'll probably want it to return a page or pages of posts. So I think the way I'll define this is going to be, we will take in a user ID. This is the standard. Then we will take in a post ID, or wait, no, we're listing posts. So we're going to take in a subreddit ID. We're listing posts for a subreddit, and this would be the string. And then if we are dealing with pagination, I don't think there's anything else apart from the pagination that we need to put here, because like listing is just a fancier get method. So we've taken the same thing that we have for get, but we also specify the page size. So the page size, and here, I think a standard API would allow this page size parameter to be optional. So, and it would default to like 50 posts or 10 posts. You would define some default page size on the back end.
Yep.
So it's an optional parameter and it's an integer. And then you have to pass in a page token when you're dealing with a paginated API. you pass in a page token. So this is like page number 1, page number 2. So this is also optional, and it's this could either be a string or an integer, to be honest. I'm actually going to go with integer, depending on how you, like, is that okay to do an integer? I know that sometimes page tokens will be strings, but from experience, I've had them be integers, sometimes literally just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so let's stick to integers. It's roughly the same, but the idea is there that you need a token to let the backend know where to start from when giving you the next page.
Cool. And so then here, if we close this, then we would just be returned from this method. We would return a list of posts. So we would have post, and here I'll draw an array to show, or an empty array to show that this is a list of posts, as well as the next page token. So next page token, and the next page token, I don't think this would be optional. Maybe it could be optional if you have only a single page. So maybe I'll put it as optional. Well, I guess since this is a return statement, it's not really optional. I'll just go with next page token, and the idea is that this is an integer. So now I think we can move on to comments. So let me go up here. We had our comment up here. So let's grab this and define the comments API. I think for comments, we're going to be dealing with something very similar to the posts. So we'll start by defining the comment entity, and then I'll go through the methods. And for the methods, I think it'll be the same thing: create, get, edit, delete, list. So let me start with the comment entity.
Okay.
So this is going to be, let's see, we want an ID, a unique identifier. So this is going to be comment ID, and it's going to be a string. Then we're going to want a creator ID, similar to what we had here for the post. So this is going to be a creator ID. And maybe I'll write S here because I'm running out of space. Then we would have a comment doesn't live in a subreddit. Well, it does in theory live in a subreddit, but it more specifically lives on a post. So I'll put post ID, I think. Post ID, and this would be a string. Then after that, we would probably want the same timestamp that we had here, right? The created at timestamp. And we can vote on a comment, right? So we probably want the votes count as well. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. But I don't think we need comments count because we don't count the number of comments on although I guess there are replies. Okay, let's deal with replies in a second because you can reply on a comment. That might be a little bit tricky. But here we said we're going to want the created at. So created at, which is a timestamp. And then there's the votes count. So I'll put votes count. This is going to be an integer. And then, I guess the same way that we have a title and a description for a post, we need some kind of content for comments. Do comments have titles and descriptions, or can we capture that in a single content field?
Let's just use a single content field.
Okay. So I'll put content string. And then, what's the last thing that we need here? We said that we might need replies. So let's see, would we actually want replies? Because we need to, I think on the Reddit UI, you want to show, like if you are dealing with a thread of comments, you want to indent replies, and you want to keep indenting them as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into a common thread. So we have probably two ways of handling this. Basically, we need to tell the UI that we're dealing with a comment thread, and to do so, we need to either store on a comment all of its replies. So, maybe it would be replies or children if we want to structure this kind of like a tree data structure. Or maybe we can have a parent pointer. Like we point to the parent comment. So So a comment would either not have a parent if it's a top level comment, or if it's the reply to a comment, it would have that comment's ID as its parent ID. Because let's see, what would be simpler? Typically, if you're dealing with a tree data structure, you prefer going top to bottom, so you would prefer storing replies. But I do feel like replies might be tricky because that means that if you post a comment, you have to update or potentially update its parent comment if you want the parent to store replies. So I actually think that we can just store parent ID and have the UI reconstruct the comment thread or comment graph from bottom up using the parent ID. And then the UI can sort comments within a thread based on created at timestamp. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, I think this is good, and you will always have the guarantee or the invariant that a parent comment has a created at that comes before a child comment. So that's
Yes,
a
you
nice
would
thing
have
for the
that.
user, for the UI to be able to use.
Yep, exactly. And so if you have, like, I'll do a very quick drawing. If you have a comment and then you've got a few replies, right? These three replies that are indented would have this as the parent, right? But then, and you, like you said, this would be created at before these three, and then these three would be sorted within themselves based on created at.
Yeah.
So I think this is good. This works, and I'll just store basically parent ID. I suppose the parent ID can be optional, and if there is no parent ID, we just assume that it's a top level comment.
Yeah.
I'll write this down: parent ID optional, and it is going to be a string that points to the comment ID. Okay. Yeah, the parent ID would be this.
There's another thing that I'd like you to consider. So you mentioned that you're later going to implement the delete comment. Since comments can have parent comments, you might not want to opt into actually deleting any comment, but rather marking it as deleted, like a soft delete, and still return it from the API. So that the UI can construct the tree and assume that the parent comment always exists, even if it was deleted.
I see. Because if you have a comment that's deleted with a full comment thread below it, like a bunch of replies, do the replies not get deleted?
They do not, no.
They do not. Okay, yeah. So that's interesting. So that means that the UI would basically have to handle that where it has so basically a comment would be like an is deleted field or something, and if it's deleted, you just don't show it or something like that.
Yes, or the UI could show that there was a comment there, but it was deleted.
Yeah, you just don't show the contents basically, but you show the
exactly.
replies below it. Okay,
That's correct.
that's a good call. So I guess I'll extend this with an is deleted field, and this would be like a boolean, I think. So I'll put bool, and I suppose that means that the content here, the backend would be in charge of returning an empty string if is deleted is true, because we wouldn't want to expose a deleted comment, like, in the network request or something like that. Okay, great. So that is going to be our comment entity. And then we are going to have, so I might run out of space here, but I'll try to do my best. We'll have create here. We'll have get. We'll have edit. We'll have delete. And we'll have list. Now, the more I think about it, do we have get for a comment? Like if we're designing, a robust API and we want to abide by certain standards, we probably do want to have get just in general, but I'm not really sure where we would use that on the UI because I think you just see the list of comments. Maybe you can click on a comment. Do you want me to design the get method? Or?
As a matter of fact, you can kind of forget about both get comment and delete comment because we just talked about it. So just worry about create, edit, and list.
Okay, great. So I'll just strike through them. For edit, I think edit would be identical to the edit one for the post.
Right.
Meaning we would take in like a user ID, a post ID, or a comment ID, and we would take not title and description, but just content, because that's the only thing that you can edit about a comment. Do you also want me to write that down, or can I skip it?
You can skip it, yeah. But okay. I just wanted you to go through the. You don't have to write it down.
Sure. Okay. So then I'll just strike through this one as well,
Mhm.
and I'll go through create and list because
Yep.
those are a little bit more interesting. So create would take in, we said user IDs for ACLs, and then it would take in, so for post, did we pass in anything else? I think we passed in a subreddit ID. So here we would pass in the post ID. So I'll put post ID. Would we, I guess if you are doing a reply to a comment, you would pass in both the post ID and the parent ID. The parent ID would be the ID of the comment that you're replying to. So I guess those would be the three parameters.
Okay.
And then the content. So yeah, I'll put user ID. This is a string. Then I'll put post ID. This is also a string. Then I'll put content, because content is mandatory. So content is going to be a string. And then we'll have the parent ID at the end. Content string. And then parent ID, which is optional.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a string. Okay, cool. So that is the create endpoint, I think. Similar to posts, it returns the entity. So it returns a comment. So I'll put that here. Returns a comment.
Okay.
The comment that you just wrote. And then for listing comments, I think listing comments would also be identical to the post here. So we would pass in a user ID, we would pass in not a subreddit, but we would pass in a post ID.
Okay.
And then page size and page token, because keep in mind, like here within a comment, it's, from a UI point of view, like conceptually, it's not really a page, but at the backend level, it is effectively a page. Like it's you're limiting how many comments you're returning, so you still use this concept of pagination.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Cool.
And then you return, instead of posts, you return a list of comments and the next page token. Do you want me to write this down, or can I just skip it? Because
I think you can skip it.
Okay, cool, great. So I'll just strike through it. The idea is it's just very similar to posting. So that is it for the commenting API. I'm trying to think, does this cover? No, we didn't cover voting. So we do still have to cover voting. How would votes work? I said at the very beginning that I don't think having an entity for votes makes that much sense. Maybe it does, actually, because if you vote on a post, and you can also vote on comments, right?
Yeah, you can.
So if you vote on posts and comments, and you don't have an entity for votes, then you are effectively editing a comment or a post. So maybe actually these edit endpoints are a little bit more complicated. And when you edit a comment or you edit a post, you can edit it with a vote. But then the thing about that is that we said that editing specifically comes with the ACL check, right? Like a user can't edit another user's post.
Right.
But a user can vote on another user's post. So maybe it's not super clean to have voting be editing a comment or a post. Maybe it does actually make sense to just have votes be a completely separate entity, similar to comments and similar to posts. They live under something. So comments live under a post, posts live under a subreddit, votes live under either a post or a comment. So maybe they have a target ID instead of a post ID or a subreddit ID. Would that kind of make sense?
Yeah, let's go over how what those different fields would be like.
Okay, so then I will actually explore this here. Give myself some space down here, and we'll write vote. So a vote would have, I suppose it would have a vote ID. So let me write that in yellow. We would have vote ID. This is also generated by the backend. It's just a string. I don't know why it seems a little bit awkward to me to have votes be a separate entity, but now I'm starting to think that it just makes the most sense and makes this as clean as it could be. So we would have a creator ID. Creator ID. This would be a string, just how posts and comments have a creator ID. And then this would have a target ID, and target ID would either be the ID of a post or of a comment that this vote is on.
Okay.
string. And then we need, maybe I'll write on the new line here, we need the type of the vote. So would the vote be, because you can either have a down vote or an up vote.
Right.
It would either be a number, and like an upvote would be +1 and a downvote would be -1, and we could keep like a tally like that, or maybe it's just like an enum, upvote, downvote. I think I'm going to go with an enum. Both approaches could maybe work, but I think enum is a little bit more explicit that this is an upvote versus a downvote. So like the idea is you have a type here, and it is an enum where the enum has either, upvote or downvote. Let's just go with up, down, up, down. Does this make sense?
Yeah, no, I think this is good.
Okay. And so I think that's all for vote. As far as the methods, so let's see, would you ever get a vote or list votes? I don't think you would ever get or list votes, at least not on the subreddit. On a subreddit, you would allow users to create votes, certainly, and users are able to you're able to change your vote on Reddit, right?
Right.
Okay. So then I think we want to support, like, I think I'm going to skip get and list, even though, again, depending on our API standards, we may want to have get and list methods defined just so that the API fits those standards. But for the purpose of in a subreddit, I think we just need create and edit. Create and edit. Maybe we do need delete as well. Let's see. So creating would be called when you go on a post or comment and you click the little up arrow or the down arrow. That would be creating, like when you click it the first time. But then let's say you have the up arrow clicked. And by the way, this is the same concept as like liking or disliking on a YouTube video, for example. You've got these two binary options and only one or the other can happen at one time. So if you've liked a post and it's already liked or upvoted and you go to downvote it, you are effectively removing the upvote and creating a downvote. So that would be an edit, right? That would be an edit. But I can also just retract an upvote without creating a downvote, right? Like if I have clicked the upvote, I can click on the upvote again and that removes the upvote but doesn't create a downvote.
Right.
Okay, so then that would be the delete. So I think we do need create, edit, delete, and we would use them in those three cases that I said. Create is when you cast a vote for the first time, or you cast a vote with no vote casted at that point in time. Edit is when you cast the opposite vote that you have just done, so you turn an upvote into a downvote or vice versa. And delete is just when you retract an upvote or retract a downvote. And then as far as like what these methods look like, I guess they take in a user ID. We always pass in the user ID. They take in the target ID. So the user ID would be the creator ID here. Then they take in a target ID, edit and delete don't take in a target ID, but create takes in a target ID. So this takes in a target ID, which would be the ID of the post or comment that you're upvoting. So I'll put string here. And then we have to just take in a type. So up or down. So this would be type.
Okay.
And I'm going to put up/down. All right. So up and down. And then we are going to have a delete and edit methods. So for these, they're going to take a user ID. They're going to take the vote ID that you're editing. And then they're going to take the user ID again is always for ACL checks because you can't like edit someone else's vote. And then the edit one would take in the type because you have to edit it to another type. So yeah, this would be, maybe I'll just read them really quickly. This would be user ID. I'll skip the types just in the interest of time. User ID, vote ID, and this would be type. And then this would be user ID and vote ID. And that's it.
Cool. So I do have one more question. We need to be able to display whether or not you've liked or you've upvoted or downvoted a certain comment or a certain post. So would that be in a get vote call, or would that be in the respective get API for the comment and the post?
Oh, you're saying like if you are on a subreddit as a user, you should see like a little of the fact that a vote is like blue or whatever, showing that you have casted a vote. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we could have, let's see. So maybe that's where getting a vote comes into play. Although, if you do getting a vote means that you have to issue a call for every comment and post. That doesn't seem like a good idea. Then I guess you could say then that's where listing comes into play. So maybe we have a list of votes and you list all of your votes. But if you have a list voting, like list votes method for a subreddit or for a post, then you have to mix and match and find all the comments. So I think maybe what makes the most sense is what you I guess hinted at that. You said does it live on a vote call or on the respective post and comment call? Maybe it lives here. So maybe maybe a post has also something like has my vote or current vote as a parameter,
Mm-hmm.
and the backend generates that when you get a post or when you list post. The backend looks at the user ID that you passed in the get and list methods and does some querying and return, and maybe there's some other logic server side. The point is the backend figures out if you have liked or upvoted or downvoted a post and returns that information in a post or in a comment. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, cool then. So I'll just write it in white just to show that this is something that we just added. I'll write it as current vote, and it's an optional parameter. And I guess this would be like a boolean to show that you have a vote. Or no, actually, it would be an enum. So it would be up, down, and we would have the same thing on the comments. Is it okay if I skip writing it?
Yeah.
Or?
You can skip it.
Okay, cool. So that is the current vote. Yes, that definitely fills out that feature that you were just talking about, showing a user that they voted on a particular entity, like a post or comment. And I think that is the core functionality of a subreddit. You said that you didn't want us to take care of moderators, right? So is there anything else that I might be missing or other functionality you want me to handle?
So could you handle this additional feature that we call awards? So a user is allowed to buy what are called like awards for real money, and then they can award posts or comments using this like in Reddit currency.
Oh, right. These are like the little like gold bags or things like that on Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you want me to be able to support buying awards and giving awards.
Correct.
So I think these are going to be completely separate API calls. Do you want me to, let's see, so we would have buying awards. I'm not super familiar with how this feature works. So is the idea that you just buy an arbitrary award in some quantity, or do you buy a specific, like are there different types, like special gold or silver gold? I forget how it works.
Since we're running low on time, let's just assume that there's only one kind of award and you can buy a certain quantity.
Okay. So then I guess we would just have a method that's called like buy award.
Mm-hmm.
And this would take in, so let's see, here we are dealing with payment. This is something that users buy with real money, right?
Correct.
Okay, so then this would take in, let me write this in yellow, this would take in a user ID for sure, because you always want to pass that. And then this would be a string, but then it would take in payment information. So as far as I know, for payment information, we can probably capture...
You can just say that it's some kind of token, which is a string.
Okay, yeah. So like a payment token that captures everything in it. Okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna go for. So I'll go with payment token. This is gonna be a string, and this basically has all of the user's information to actually create a real payment, like credit card information or stuff like that. And then I guess the last thing would be you said you buy a certain quantity of awards. So then the last thing here would be a quantity, which would be, I guess, an integer. They have to be whole numbers, right? So you buy
Right.
1 or 2 awards.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put quantity, and this will be an integer. And I think that's it for buying an award. And then you wanted me to have the method to give an award. Do I have to define like the schema for an award entity, or can I skip that?
Let's skip that. Yeah.
Okay, so then just giving an award.
Yeah.
Give award. So I guess give award would, let me write this in yellow, it would take in always a user ID because you need to check like how much the user has in terms of awards and all that. So this would be a string. But then I guess all that you need is a quantity and a target, right? Because you can give multiple awards to a user, or is it only one?
Let's just say it's only one award per user per post or comment.
Okay. So then I think this just takes like, what would be the word? Like, I guess we can go with target since we use target for vote. So target ID, and this is a string, and the understanding is that this target ID is a user ID. Or no, I guess if you said that this you give an award to a post or a comment, then this is the same thing as vote. Yeah, this is literally a post ID or a comment ID.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then how would you display those again through the API when you're trying to list comments or list posts?
Oh, how would you display? Would it be? Is it that like a user would see the award that they've given, or is it that any user can see if a post has an award, or what?
Any user can see how many awards a specific comment or post has.
So it's kind of like it's similar to the voting mechanism or the comments mechanism where you just see the count, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. So then I think we can just add up here the same way that we have comments count and vote count. We can have like, I guess like awards count. So I'll write it in white here. Awards count. And this is an integer.
Okay.
And this lives on both posts and comments up in the top right over there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that's great.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else that you'd like me to design for this API?
No, that's it. You've covered everything that I was looking for. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. With that, I hope that you found this video informative, and we'll see you in the next one.